Hi cozy friends, and welcome back to Morgan Unraveled. My name is Morgan, and on this channel I like to unravel my anxious mind one stitch at a time and share the process of my making along with you. I am so excited for this long-awaited video. I have been doing a whole lot of baby knitting and baby knit planning. At the moment I am 8 months pregnant with my second baby due in April, a little girl, and my firstborn is a little boy who will be 4 this year in a couple months. The two of them are going to be almost exactly 4 years apart, which is really exciting. I think it's the perfect age gap. He's so excited to be a big brother. I really think the most special part of welcoming her into the world is going to be getting to see him be a big brother. Also getting to meet her, obviously. We're so very excited. We're still between a couple names, and we actually conceived her in Australia, so a lot of the baby knits are in some ways Australian coded and or just with Australian yarn to have an ode to that. I tried to get dressed in a hand knit today, but I was just too warm in the house to keep it on, so I won't be wearing anything hand knit right now. I do have a few finished baby knits to share with you in this video, as well as a ton of plans, as well as the yarns I'm planning to use. I want to talk a bit about my philosophies with baby knitting, because I know a lot of people are quite discouraging about it. They grow so quickly, they grow out of the knits faster than you can make them in some instances. So I want to share my thoughts on that and how I go about my baby knitting. And at the end, I'm also going to talk about what fibers I like to use for baby knits, as well as how I maintain my baby knits. Baby knits is going to be a bit of a catch-all term because I am going to be talking about anything I'm knitting for littles, anywhere from newborn sizes up into the toddler years. Let me know down in the comments what you are working on while watching, or if you've worked on any baby knits lately, whether it's for gifts or for your own. Before we dive into the baby knits though, I want to take a moment to celebrate my new cozy corner. I want to say a huge thank you to FlexiSpot for sending me their Power Swivel reclining glider to try out. I feel like it came at the perfect timing because we were trying to set up our bedroom to accommodate also being a nursery. When I got the opportunity to try out this chair, I jumped at the chance. But for right now, it is also my cozy knitting corner. It swivels, it rocks, and it reclines. It is so comfortable and supportive, which is saying a lot for someone who is 8 months pregnant. Every night I have been setting myself up with my heating pad in this chair. There's actually a power outlet to be able to like charge my phone and things on this, and the reclining feature is also powered, which is going to be very, very helpful when I'm postpartum, but is already helpful right now because it's really hard to use those core muscles to push a recliner up and down, and it's really great to just be able to elevate my feet and support my back because I have a lot of sciatic pain during pregnancy. The fabric I chose is their vegan leather in this beautiful brown color, but they also have linen options available. I feel like this chair really blends my vintage aesthetics, but with convenient modern features. I also use the power features to charge my iPad when I am reading my patterns. So if you are in the market for a cozy knitting chair or nursery chair, I highly recommend you check out FlexiSpot. I will have them linked down in the description. And once again, thank you so much to FlexiSpot for gifting me this beautiful recliner. Let's talk about my philosophy around baby knitting, because as I stated, I know a lot of people find it to be a waste of time to knit for babies because they grow so quickly. My biggest thing when it comes to baby knits is that I want to create special heirloom pieces that not only will each child get to use as we grow our family, but also one day they can hold on to them and use them for their children if they so choose. I know my son already has taken such an interest in my crafting, and he wants to help me pick out yarns. He wants to watch the process of them grow, and he has even sat in my lap and made stitches before, and I think that he will probably take interest in learning to knit one day, and I'm sure my daughter will as well. They will see the value of the craft as they grow, and I think they would like to pass those knits down to their kids. But even if they don't, having these special pieces that I can look back on, whether I put them in a shadow box or just hold on to them and as my kids grow, even though they grow out of them, I find them to be very special, classic, timeless pieces that will get more wear than just with one baby. Obviously, these heirloom pieces are really special for taking special photos, whether it's their milestone photos or their birth announcement photos. So I always consider that when picking sizing for what I am making. But my practical take when it comes to baby knitting is that most of the things I make are for 12 months plus, because when they are about 6 months, they can wear things with their sleeves rolled up, and it's a very cute look, a cute oversized look on a baby. But as they become 1 year or so, they can still fit into it. So most of the sweaters and things I make are size 1 to 2, and then I'll make a couple suits or rompers for those smaller sizes. But I also like to cloth diaper after they are a couple months old, once they fit into my cloth diaper stash. So I knit those suits a few sizes up usually anyways, because I want it to accommodate the fluff butt. So if you have any other tips for how you accommodate cloth diapers in your baby knits, please share them down below, because I would really like to be able to make rompers accommodate the sizing of a cloth diaper better. I'll have to do some more research on that, but right now my method is to just size up a little bit. I never really knit the newborn size. Except for one thing I made, which is going to be for her birth announcement photos. And I will share that piece very soon. Okay, let's dive into the finished objects I have made so far for her. I only have a couple to share with you because most of them are works in progress. But the very first thing I made for her is this Sunday suit by Petite Knit. It is in Juniper Moon Patagonia in the color Acorn, which is a sport weight yarn. This pattern calls for a fingering weight, so I did end up running out of yarn. I knit it in the size 2, which is I think 1 to 3 months. When I cast this on, we found out we were pregnant. I was still living in Australia, and I thought that if we had an April due date that we would be having a fall baby there. So obviously this would have been perfect for that. But now we are back in America unexpectedly. So this will be for a spring baby, and hopefully she can still get some wear out of it, even in this smaller size for a more wintry knit. But I don't regret making it in the least, because she will wear it, and we plan to have 3 anyways, so I'm sure the next baby will get to wear it as well. As I said, I did have to buy a second skein, so you can see that there is a color lot difference in the sleeve right here. I was able to source a second skein on Wool & Company, and they even went ahead and wound it for me, which was very nice. But there was a difference in the color lot, which I'm not surprised, because as I said, I purchased this in Australia. So the fact that I was even able to find the same yarn was a win for me. And I'm just happy I was able to finish it, because there was a moment where I thought I was going to have to rip out the legs and just make it into a cardigan, which would have been cute as well. And I may make a Sunday suit cardigan version, or I think she might have a cardigan version, but I have purchased so many of these baby patterns at this point that it might be nice to kind of make it up for myself. I will definitely be using the rest of this ball for some accessories to match. Probably a bonnet or something of that sort. This does feel like a more rustic merino than a soft one, but it did block out quite soft. I think it is skin soft, like it's not irritating. I have found it quite interesting to learn the differences in different merinos. I think the extra fine merinos are the ones that are more soft, but ones that don't say fine, I would say a bit more structured. You can really see the definition in the texture, and I really love the look it gives. I used these buttons from Amazon. I will show you the set. It is a set of coconut shell buttons, and I am using these for just about all my makes right now because I really love the look of them. And I'm so excited to get to put this on her and hopefully make some matching little pieces to go with it. I highly doubt it's going to be the coming home set anymore though, because I am knitting a different one, as I said, for that, and it's a bit more spring appropriate. The second finished object I have for her does not have the ends woven in or the buttons put on, but it is the Lacy Romper by Pippi and Eve. This pattern actually comes with 2 different options for the lace motif. I only slightly modified it to not begin the lace chart until after the crotch increases, because I felt like it was weird to have lace down here where her diaper will be. And then it has these little straps, and you can wear this over a little onesie, like short sleeve onesie, or you could wear it just on skin. I chose the little diamond lace motif, which I think is just too cute. And I even made a matching bonnet. This is the Simone bonnet by Knit in the Womb. And this was a free pattern on her website. This pattern was not free, and they did not go together in a set, but I just decided to make them as a set. And I did modify this pattern. It is different than the original. I'll show the picture on the screen, but I basically just offset the motifs so that it would match the romper just a little bit better. This romper is actually knit flat. It worked up very quickly, but you have to seam the sides together. And it's been a long time since I've seamed a garment. I think my very first knit, the folklore cardigan, which was quite an undertaking, by the way, for a beginner. But that was the only time I've ever, I think, seamed a project. So that was a learning curve, but I was so glad to learn that skill because I feel like it's very necessary to know. But as I was learning it, I was being so careful to make sure that I didn't like sew the inside to the outside. And I ended up sewing it together with the front panel upside down. So I had to rip that out and fix it. But I think that this set is just so darling. It's perfect for a little spring baby, and I can't wait to put it on her. I do still have some of this yarn left, so I may even make another piece, maybe some socks, and it will be great to layer even as it gets into fall if she still fits it. I think I made the size 6 months, which is the second size, because I just wanted her to be able to have it be oversized and get more wear out of it throughout the entire summer instead of growing out of it along the way, because I'd much rather it be a little big on her than too small. And my son was always in the next size for each stage of life, so I just wanted everything to be a bit oversized. The yarn I knit this with is a bit of a mystery because I purchased it when I was very new to knitting. Like I said, was working on the folklore cardigan. It was one of my first projects back then, and I got to stop at a indie yarn shop. It was the first time I'd ever been in one. At one point when I was working on that cardigan, we were taking a trip from Virginia up to Pittsburgh, where some of my husband's family lives, and we stopped in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I tried to look up this yarn shop to figure out what yarn I might have used. I know it was Barocco, and I think it was their vintage DK, but it's just a suspicion I have. So I tried to look on their website and see what their inventory is. And could you guess what the yarn shop was called? It was called Magpie Knits. And I'm not sure if you're familiar, but magpies are Australian birds, and this is knit for an Australian baby. So it just feels like even when I'm not trying, all of her little knits are in some way Australian coded or with some sort of tie to Australia, which is so, so special. So I'm so glad to have gotten to make these for her, and I think they are going to be so darling. One last thing I have to talk about with this project actually is I got an I-cord tool on Amazon. I had seen some people using these tools, and I just wanted to try it out and see how it worked. And I was very impressed with the process. I do think I could have done it neater, but I was learning. And I think that the next time I do an I-cord, it will look even better. But it was so quick. I literally did the I-cord on this in about 10 minutes, maybe. Once I got the flow. I had to learn how to do it by following a tutorial or two. But once I got the flow of it, I cranked it out, and the entire straps were done in about 10 minutes. So I do think it's worth it if you just want to have a different tool in your arsenal, a 3-stitch I-cord tool. You can use this to create freestanding I-cord to add to a project, or attach it and do applied I-cord edging. Do I think it's necessary? No, it's just a little gadget to play around with, and it definitely is convenient if you have it in your toolkit, but not a necessity, and you can definitely do I-cord the old school way. I will have this on my Amazon storefront if you are interested in trying it out, as well as the buttons I showed you. And this also has a darling little picot edge. It was my first time knitting picot, and I feel like I'm going to be adding that to all of her knits. I definitely plan to make more bonnets and beanies and accessories to match with all the leftovers of all of these yarns. And I think it'll make for such cute little sets. And it's so special to be able to do that when you are hand making your own kids' clothes, or when you're making baby knits for friends. It's time to finally talk about some works in progress. The first one I'm going to share, I actually haven't touched in a couple months, but I am knitting a Salty Days sweater modified for a junior to kind of match my Salty Day sweater. This one is in a dusty lilac and mine is in a icy blue, but I think it is going to be so cute to be able to put a Salty Day sweater on a baby. I think Kika was actually, this is the Salty Day sweater by Katova Kika, and I do think at one point I saw that Kika was working on making a baby or junior version of this, but she has not released the pattern. What I am doing is I'm using a DK cotton yarn and following the size 1 instructions on size 4mm needles in order to achieve about a 2-year size. I think it would fit anywhere between 1 and 2 years. I am using Drops Belle in the color Rose Water, which is color shade number 22. This is a cotton, viscose, and linen blend. The Salty Days is an all-over textured pattern that has ribbing and eyelets and lace, and in the next chart I'm going to be doing are cables. I started working on this the very day we found out she was a girl. When we were leaving Australia, I tried to go for one last ultrasound and make sure she was all healthy and good to go before my flight. And we were hoping we'd find out gender then, but they couldn't say for sure yet. So when we got here a few weeks in, we went to a 3D sneak peek ultrasound and found out we were having a girl. And that day I came home and I cast on the lacy purple knit of my dreams for a matching little mom and daughter set. The reason I put this down, because I worked all of this up in like 2 days, but the reason I put it down is because I thought I was being clever and tried to modify only casting on 1 stitch in the underarms, I think, or something like that. And then when I got to the cable repeat section, I realized that wasn't going to work and that I had offset the cable chart repeat. So all I need to do is rip back to the underarm and cast on the correct number of stitches. I have shared in the past that I knit my son a adult Aran colorwork jumper and modified it only by knitting it with a DK yarn on 4mm needles, and it sized it down to his chest circumference. Obviously I had to check my gauge and everything, but it did work out in that way. So that is basically what I did with this one. And I don't think I even swatched this time. But once I got to this point, I did measure the back yoke and see what the finished chest circumference will be. So I will put that on the screen, but it will fit for a size like 1 to 2. So I just need to sit down very soon and rip back to that underarm. And having pulled this out makes me really excited to do that and finish this project. But obviously she wouldn't be wearing it for a while anyway. So I guess I just lost momentum when I realized I'd have to frog, which I always do. I never want to immediately pull things off the cables because I'm so afraid, especially with lace being right above, that I'll mess everything up and have to start over. I need some chapstick. If you have been around my channel for any length of time, you'll remember that I did a Salty Days knit along, which was so much fun. And my Salty Days sweater just has so many special memories stitched into it because I got to share that process on here with so many of you that joined in. And then I also got to wear it down on the southern coast of Australia when we were doing our Great Ocean road trip. So it's just such a special knit to me, and I'm so excited to have a match with her. My next work in progress I have to share with you is the Mini Augustins number 5 by Augustins DK, also known as Anne Sophie Velling. And I am knitting this in Cascade Eco Merino DK in the color Sandy Beach. Of course I had to. Of course I had to make it somehow beach or Australian coded. I tried knitting this with Drops Bell as well, and it was just very open and lace, like the lace was very open, and I wanted this to a substantial blanket, and I wanted the lace to be very visible. I think this is such an heirloom quality, timeless design. I really love Anne Sophie Velling's patterns. This is the first time I'm actually knitting one from her, but I do have so many on my favorites list. But when the cotton yarn, it didn't work out, I was perusing Wool & Company. I really love Cascade yarns. I was finishing up my jacket number 2 with some of theirs, and I found a merino. The yarn calls for, or the pattern calls for heavy merino by Knitting for Olive, which I did look at on their website. But I was able to get the 100 gram skeins of this for the same price as the 50 gram balls of Knitting for Olive, so I did opt for this, and I really like this yarn. It is an undyed merino wool, and I was looking through their cream shades, and when I saw one called Sandy Beach, I just felt like it was too perfect for our little Aussie girl. It's, again, one of the more woolly feeling merinos rather than one of the fine, softer ones, but I do think it'll block out, and I think it's going to be perfect for giving the structure to the lace that I want, and I think it's also going to be very comfortable on her as a throw-over blanket. I think I could even use this as a cover when I'm nursing, or a cover on her bassinet, as long as it's breathable enough. And most of the time, this merino won't be next to skin because she'll also have clothes in between, but I do think it's going to be soft enough if it is next to her skin. This is my first time knitting any sort of blanket, so to dive straight into a mandala lace motif, there's several lace charts throughout this, but it is so easy. It's so fun. This blanket is knit in the round, and you just do increases and then lace charts and then more increases before the next chart, and there are eyelet details in between, much like the Salty Days, which is most of my experience with lace knitting. I have knit the Salty Days as well as the Poet Tee, so I feel like I'm an intermediate lace knitter at this point, but this pattern is really easy to follow. I tend to follow my lace charts on my iPad, and I will add a shape or a line to my pattern, and I will move that shape up and block the rest of the rows above so that I only see what I've done and what row I'm on. And that's really helpful for charted knitting. If you follow your patterns digitally, I highly suggest like marking up as you go. I guess I will briefly talk about the first iteration of her blanket I attempted. And I know I'm so hesitant to share this because I feel like everyone's going to tell me to just finish it. But I had, after we found out she was a girl, I had just really wanted to make her a mandala blanket before I found this pattern, which is knit. And I did crochet before I learned how to knit. And I found this pattern by Blooming Joy, or it's called the Blooming Joy Mandala Blanket by V Crochet, and she has a like 40-part series on her YouTube of how to knit this. So it really holds your, how to crochet this. It really holds your hand. And there are people in the projects of this that used fingering weight yarn all the way up to worsted. So I thought if I used a fingering weight yarn, I could achieve a baby blanket size without having to do the entire thing. And man, this looks so beautiful. Pulling it back out does make me want to finish it. But I stopped and put this down because I started to realize that if I wanted this to end up an actual baby blanket size, I should have used like a 4mm of a hook in order to make a more open lace. And even though I was using the fingering weight yarn, I think I'm using a 3.25mm hook for this blanket, which, I mean, kudos to me for getting this far, but it is at the moment measuring 17 inches in like width, and The next few rows, turn it into a square, like I'm going to be filling in this gap. And so I just felt like if I wanted to finish this, I'd have to start over, which maybe isn't the case. I would just have to really commit and do a whole lot more work than I thought I was going to. I'll show you the pattern on the screen, but very shortly after this part of the pattern, it turns into a square, and I was just going to do a border or two of that, and then that blanket would be done. But if I stopped there, it would be almost like a burp blanket size, a receiving blanket size, not really a like baby blanket size that I was going for. But it's so beautiful, I might as well finish it, right? I just don't know if I have the stamina because...
Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams.
When I was working on this, I was so excited about it. I just really hit a wall with it and just put it away and stopped looking at it. I am using, for the cream part, Cascade Heritage sock yarn in the color macadamia, which I had originally purchased to make the porcelain sweater. So I have like 3 hanks of it, but I tried starting swatching for the porcelain sweater so many times, and I was just like, I did not want to do color work flat. And so I just have never knit my porcelain. And I decided that if I do knit the porcelain, I think I want to invert the colors and have a darker main color and a lighter contrast color. So I felt like I could just use this Cascade Heritage for something else. And that is why I used it for the main color in this blanket. And the pink is a hand-dyed Australian merino yarn from an Australian dyer. I will put the name of the brand it is on the screen. This hand-dyed yarn is a beautiful, like rosy tea rose pink, and I just think it is so darling in this combination. But I think it is so special that I was able to work that into a cute little baby blanket. And even if it doesn't work for this, I will use it for something for her, and I will still use both of these yarns for something. I guess let me know what you think of this. Should I commit and just finish it and turn it into a small receiving blanket to throw over her back when I'm holding her? Or should I turn it into something else? Let me know your thoughts if you are a crocheter. How do I save this, or do I move on with my life? Okay, now we're gonna jump into yarn acquisitions that I have acquired for my baby knits and what I plan to make with them. I really wanted to try yarn cone knitting because I feel like you can get really amazing fibers, but for so much less and in larger quantities. But it's also really versatile because you can buy lace weights and then decide how many strands you want to hold in order to achieve a fingering or a sport weight yarn, even up to DK and worsted. But obviously I wanted to dip my toes into yarn cone knitting for my baby knitting. I feel like it was kind of hard to find yarn cone suppliers here in the US. I would love your suggestions down below if you have them. A lot of the baby knits call for fingering weight yarn, which I don't have a lot of in my stash besides like single skeins of sock yarns. But for baby knitting, you can get just a couple 100 grams on a cone of lace weight and then hold them with a few strands to achieve a fingering weight. And then it's still enough yarn to make a couple projects and like some accessories. I ended up buying some yarn cones from Good Yarn here in the US. They are based out of Portland, Oregon, which is one of the cities on our contenders for where we want to move. So I felt like it was great to try them out. I think what really appealed to me about their website is that you can choose how many grams you want. Like you pretty much just state the number and they will put it on a cone. Whereas a lot of yarn cone suppliers sell in like 500 gram cones. So that's amazing because you can make so much with it. But because I just wanted to try out cone knitting, I had a really hard time like committing. But then I couldn't pick between colors, so I ended up getting 4 cones anyways. Almost all of these except this green cotton one are fine lace weights. So I will be holding 2 or 3 strands to achieve the fingering weight I need for the baby patterns. And I will talk more about how I'm managing that, like knitting from the cone, in just a minute. So I actually do have one project from a cone that I am working on. It is the Arantis Ruffle Lace Romper by Knitting for Sif. It is a cute little romper that has this ruffle lace on the chest, and I have purchased so many of the Arantis patterns. She had a sale at one point, I think for like her birthday, and I just went ahead and snagged up all the ones I had in my favorites. I will say these patterns do not have charts for the lace, and they also don't hold your hand when it comes to stitch counts. It'll tell you to increase like 5 stitches over the back panel evenly. And so then you have to count how many stitches you have on that back panel and do the math of how many stitches apart you should do your increases, which I don't appreciate. When I have paid for a pattern, I don't want to have to stop and count and do math in order to figure out how many increases I need to do. I feel like that information should be given to me. But that's just me, and that's probably because I have been so spoiled by petite knit patterns. This was my first time doing a provisional cast. Oh no, it's not my first time, but it's my first time in a while, and I still feel like a total noob at it. And I stupidly used worsted weight for that provisional cast on because I didn't think it mattered. And I do hope that when I pick up the stitches that they're not too gapey for the neckline. But it also has a cute little eyelet neck hole so that you can button the back but like be able to fit it over the baby's head. And I am knitting this in the newborn size. It doesn't look like a whole lot yet, so I will obviously have the photo of the pattern on the screen. But this is going to be probably the last like suit or body romper I make, just because, like I said, I like to make the bigger sizes, but I really wanted to have an appropriate birth photos outfit because the other one was so warm that I feel like this would work better. I am knitting straight from the cone for this one, and my technique for doing that is called the Navajo plying technique. So you can use this anytime you are trying to hold 3 strands from a single cone, and instead of winding it into 3 balls and holding from that, you are able to pull up a loop, and then when you reach the end of this 3 strands of loop, you pull through another strand, and then you've got, once again, 3 strands coming from the cone. I will link the tutorial I follow to figure out how to do that, but it's a very creative technique. It was created by the Navajo people, and it is mostly used by spinners. They call it the in-ply, but it is the same technique. I find it so cool that you can go from this very, very fine single strand and turn it into a 3-stranded yarn. So this is where it's 3 strands, and then in just a moment you will see that loop come through, and now I'm holding just 1 strand, which is so very fine. But from this cone, I am planning on making this romper as well as the matching bonnet and socks for her birth announcement photos, and I think it's going to be so darling. I do really need to get one of those cake or cone holders that this can spin on, because that has been the trickiest thing about doing this Navajo technique from the cone, is that it doesn't spin, it just kind of falls down sometimes. So once I get that, I'll really be having it good. This yarn is a 100% merino wool in the color Ash Blush, and there are 1,400 meters in 100 grams of this, and I bought 200 grams. But when you are knitting with it 3-stranded, that brings it down to 233 meters in 50 grams, which is just about the same as like knitting for Olive's light fingering merinos. So very comparable, and this is going to be so durable, and it's so soft. Holding the strands together from these lace weight yarn cones, I hear, is just the most durable and nice. It creates such a nice fabric. So I'm really excited about this. I got 200 grams of this for only $15. And as I said, I will be able to make so many projects with it, which is really nice. The next yarn I got on a cone from Good Yarn is this green olive. It is Cessia Bio Cables, and there's 430 meters in 100 grams. So this is a light fingering weight on its own. I will not have to hold it double stranded. And it is the color, it's 100% cotton, and it's in the color olive clay. My original plan when I purchased this was to make the fern dress by Knitting for Olive. And I love that one so much. I think it's like a circular yoke lace pattern that has this beautiful detail as it trails down the body in the increases. I got this 200 grams for only $11, which is such a good deal. But I also really like the olive cardigan for this yarn, so I'm really torn. That one has beautiful leaf lace motifs, which I feel like look like eucalyptus, which is, you know, such an icon of Australia, their eucalyptus trees. So I feel like that would be really special as well. I also would love to make the olive blanket. Is that what it's called? Yeah, the olives blanket, but I'm not sure if I have enough for that. But that's another consideration either for this yarn or in general to make in a green cotton for her. Now, the next two cones may end up being used for me. I have taken some yarn off of this one. This is a cashmere merino, so 70% merino wool, 30% cashmere in this cinnamon color. I have wound from this 4 balls of like, I think 25 grams because I was swatching. I was swatching to make her a little Beatrix baby cardigan and modifying it from the adult pattern by Gregoria Fibers. But I want to use this yarn for me so bad, which I know is so bad, but it's a cashmere. I feel like I really want to, I'm considering using it for a knit for me held with a mohair. So we'll see what this turns into. But I am knitting so many things for her, and I have more yarn on the way for her knits as well. So I would not feel that bad if I decided to use that for myself. As well as this one, this Canberra lamb's wool, which it says is made in Italy, but I think it is with Australian wool. It is 100% lamb's wool, also 1,500 meters in 100 grams, but if I held a few strands of it, it would make a fingering weight yarn and could be held with a mohair if I wanted it to be. I bought 220 grams of this one because that's the quantity that was remaining of it, so it felt silly to get 200 when there was only going to be 20 grams left. And the way this website sells is, like I said, by the gram. And so this one is 11 cents per gram. And this is the most I paid for a cone at $26.30 for, 230 grams. And it's just such a beautiful shade. I would love to use this for some sort of top. I'm having a lot of fun working with these cones and really seeing how versatile they can be. But I do think that there are pros and cons with them, and I'll probably make a whole video on that sometime about pros and cons of knitting with cone yarn, why you should, when you shouldn't. I will definitely need to get a bit more experience with them before making that. One last thing I wanted to talk about that I have acquired for my baby knitting is I needed finer needles for my baby knits because, as I said, they're almost all knit with light fingering yarn. And my Knit Picks interchangeable knitting needle set, which is my very favorite needles, I use them for every project. They only go down to 3.25 millimeters, and just about all of these patterns call for the main needle being 3 millimeter and then sometimes even smaller needles. I was not in a place in life to purchase a lace knitting needle set from ChowGoo because I know that theirs are said to be the very best when it comes to finer needles, but I was perusing on Amazon and I actually was able to find this set of fine knitting needles for only $45, which is really decent for a full interchangeable knitting needle set. And the sizes range from 2.25 millimeter all the way up to 4.5, which is US size 1 to US 7. I'm really impressed with them. I'm really enjoying having some metal knitting needles because at the moment I only have my wooden Knit Picks interchangeable set. I did resell my Leica copper knitting needles because I didn't feel like they were my preferred set, and when we were moving I felt like it was not worth the space it was going to take up, and I wanted to find a knitter that would appreciate them more than I was. But I'm really enjoying this set, and I love that it goes down to such small sizes for my baby knitting. So I will have these linked on my Amazon storefront if you are looking for an affordable set of fine lace interchangeable knitting needles. And it's also really nice to have a second set of my 4mm and 4.5s because those are the sizes I use the most for all of my other projects that aren't baby knits. So really helpful to have more of those for all of the works in progress I always have going on. And now we're moving on into talking about some baby knitting project plans that I have the yarn for, but I have not cast them on yet. The first one I'm going to talk about, I've already mentioned before on this channel, but I got Knitting for Olive merino for the very first time. This will be my first time knitting with them, but I feel like everybody knits with them here on YouTube. And when we were in Australia, none of the shops I shopped at had it, so I've just never had access, I guess, and I just didn't want to order it when I had access to so many Australian wools there. We went on a trip up to Kentucky to see some of my husband's family recently, and we stopped in Louisville at a yarn shop called Over the Next Row. And they actually, funnily enough, were just moving buildings, and their doors still had the branding from the last business that was there, which had a kangaroo on it. So it just felt so like symbolic that we are looking for a yarn shop, and like we were having a hard time finding it because they didn't have their signage up yet. And it had a kangaroo there once we found it. Anyways, I got to shop Knitting for Olive for the first time. This is a light fingering merino yarn. I got the color ochre brown, which is so beautiful. It's like a rusty orangey brown color. These sell for $9 for 50 grams, and I got 3 balls to be able to make her a little dress. And my plan is to make the Sunday dress just like her little Sunday suit, so that even once she grows out of that, she has this to wear, and also match her big brother in his Sunday sweater, which is also a orange tone. It's the same yarn as this, actually. This is his star blanket that I made. It is crocheted, and I made it when to be his milestone blanket before he was born, and now it kind of gets thrown around it lays across his bed, or it lays across the back of whatever cozy corner chair I have. But it's just Pound of Love acrylic from Lion Brand. It's nothing fancy, so I feel like as I have grown in my knitting journey, this little girl is getting a lot fancier fibers than he did the first time around. But he has definitely gotten some special woolly knits in his wardrobe recently. I know we're not talking about junior knits, but I have to show you, I finished his Dagmar junior sweater by Petite Knit last night, and I haven't blocked it yet, but I just finished putting the second sleeve on, and he wore it all morning, even for snack time, so I'm probably gonna have to dust some crumbs off, but it is so beautiful, and he is so proud of it, and I am so proud to get to make him special things. My husband was saying, oh, he's so lucky that his mama can do that, and it actually made me emotional because it's so sweet that my husband and my son really appreciate my craft. The next yarn I have that has a project planned, Knit Picks Bare Cadena yarn in this bulky weight, 70% Peruvian Highland wool, 30% superfine alpaca. And I'm going to use this to make the Selma suit by Petite Knit. It is a cute little winter suit that they can wear when they're in their stroller or whatever in the winter to keep warm. And my dream is to work on this when she is a newborn, because it's just a garter stitch and seamed up piece. And I think that that will be such easy knitting for when I'm nap trapped. I think it'll be quite blissful to be nap trapped under a baby again this time around while my husband chases our toddler and or he comes and cuddles with us as well. So I'm really hoping to soak up that time and really treasure it. I feel like I did with my first as well, but you know how fleeting it is once you are having your second. So I'm really going to soak it up while I can. I'm planning to make this in the size 12 months so that it fits her in the winter when she's about 9 months, but all throughout the winter, even in her cloth diapers and things like that. So I want it to be nice and oversized and just a second layer over her onesies or sleepers. I think there's a potential that I overcorrect with their sizing, but I feel like it makes it easier for it to fit them and future babies whenever it is seasonally appropriate if you knit a larger size, because you can always roll things up, but you can't squeeze them in if it's just too snug. My next plan is really exciting because it is with some Australian merino. This is Bentigo Woolen Mills Whisper merino in the color cherry. It is the cutest like wine cherry red. And my plan for this is to knit the Currant cardigan by Marina Ayueva. This is a child's cardigan pattern that has the most beautiful little bauble flower motifs. And it's called for, I think, Drops Air, which is like an Aran weight yarn. And this is only an 8-ply or DK weight. But I was doing some swatching and I tried on both my US 7 and 8 needles. So that is what the purl bumps are. I mark what needle I used based off of how many purl bumps there are in that section. Using the US 8 needle at the gauge I was at, if I follow the size 4 years, I could achieve a 12 to 18 month size, which is what I would like to make. So I could either do that or I could get a mohair to hold with this and just follow the 18-month size, holding a DK with a mohair. I'm just nervous that mohair could irritate her skin, so I haven't committed to that, but let me know if you have done any baby knitting with mohair and if that's a problem, because I've seen that Knitting for Olive does have mohair in some of her baby knits, so maybe it's not a problem and I don't need to worry about it. So let me know, and if so, I could get some Drops Kid Silk mohair to hold with this and make that Currant cardigan. I'm really excited to work on this, not only because I'll get to work with some Australian merino. This will be the first time I've gotten to use their Whisper. I've only ever used their like wools, and it is so soft. This is one of those like fine, soft merinos, and I do think that that's more likely to pill, but I haven't seen anyone complain about that with Bentigo. So this cardigan is written bottom up, something I found that makes me extra excited for working on this project. It has a lot of baubles for those little flower motifs, and I saw a tutorial for how to do baubles without having to turn your work back and forth by using a crochet hook. So I'm really excited to try that out, because when I made baubles for my Arctic Light sweater, I really was just flipping back and forth, and that was so tedious. So I think it'll be really nice to try a new technique for that. The next project plan I have that I have acquired yarn for, I'm still waiting to come in the mail. So I purchased a haul of Drops Baby Merino, which is I think the most popular yarn for baby knitting. I do believe they are sport weight yarns, and I was finding with my cone yarns that holding them 4-stranded to achieve sport weight was actually the perfect way to size down some of the adult size patterns I wanted to turn into like 1 to 2 year sizes. So I thought it would be nice to stock up on a few colorways of Drops Baby Merino. I am planning on making a baby version of the Beatrix cardigan by Gregoria Fibers in Drops Baby Merino in the color Peanut. This pattern was actually gifted to me by a very kind viewer named CJ, and I am planning to knit it for myself. I mentioned it a while back in a yarn haul and project plans video, and it's honestly in the forefront of my mind lately. I think it's going to be my next cast on for myself. But I want to make one for baby because it just looks like such an heirloom quality piece. I think that Gregoria Fibers patterns just look so classic and feminine. So it felt too perfect to not make for a little baby girl. And from my swatching with other sport weight yarns I have in my stash, I was able to find that if I use a 3.25 or 3.5 millimeter needle with a sport weight yarn, I would be able to follow the size 1 of this Aran weight cardigan to achieve about a 29 to 30 inch chest circumference, which I think would just be perfectly oversized for those early toddler years. I am having a lot of fun being creative with going through the patterns that I have and figuring out how I could modify them for a baby size or a child size. And I really want to do more of that with my making. I mean, I'm already obviously planning that. As much as I love to support the pattern designers, I find that I would really like to use my patterns that I buy more than once and really be using my pattern library more. So I think it would be valuable to, instead of purchasing patterns specifically for children, getting really creative with doing that myself just by modifying these patterns or the yarn weight. Another pattern I'm going to be using Drops Baby Merino in the color Sage for are the Clover Tights by Knitting for Olive. I think it would be so darling to have a little pair of tights to put on her to go with her little onesies. And this pattern is just too darling, so I'm really excited about that. But like I said, I also could use this olive colored yarn for that Olive's cardigan. So either one of them. But I do have a lot more plans for cardigans than I do pants. But I also, like I said, cloth diaper, so it feels kind of impractical to make too many pants. The other pair of pants I do want to make though are the Willems pants by Petite Knit. I have been watching the Norwegian knitter. She is one of my favorite knitters here. She is so productive. Sometimes she makes me feel like I knit nothing at all because she's just churning out projects, but it's so inspiring. She is pregnant at the same time as me, which is so exciting. And she said that the most useful knit in her son's wardrobe, her first son, was the Willems pants or Willems overalls. So I really want to make those probably in a few sizes, but I got a few different colors. So I think I'll make some in a moss color and some in maybe the chocolate color. And I think that those would be good for both this baby and the next because they're both quite gender neutral colors. And it's a very gender neutral pattern, whereas most of my plans are like dresses or lacy things because I'm so excited to be able to knit for a girl. So now I want to mention a few patterns I have in my library, but I don't know what yarns I'm going to use for them quite yet. I'll probably use some of the cones for them or some of the Drops Baby Merino. I have, like I said, a ton of the Arantis patterns by Knitting for Sif. I have the lace ruffle dress and romper. I have the lace cardigan, which has the ruffle lace more up here like a collar and is so darling. I have the lace ruffle top as well as the socks. And I also have the bonnet and the sun hat. These are all fingering weight patterns, so I could definitely use the cones, but I could also probably get away with using the baby merino, as I've seen a lot of people in the pattern project notes do as well. Another yarn I have in stash that is an Australian merino is this Bellissimo 5-ply in this gray color. I got this when I was in Australia, and I had bought it to hold with a mohair and make a top by Sari Nordland, but I have discovered that I just do not feel like this is my color. So I can't see myself making anything for me with it. So maybe I will use this to make one of the Arantis patterns for a baby girl. One more yarn I have in my stash that I might use for her that I haven't decided on a pattern for yet is this Bendigo Woolen Mills cotton I got in the back room in the color chestnut. This was super marked down because it says that there's white marks in it, but I've really only seen like one, and that would be so minimal. I could either cut it out and just have an extra end, which these come in 200-gram balls, so it's not really a big deal if there's one end somewhere in there. I have 2 balls of this, and I had originally wanted to make a shirt for myself in it, and I had cast on the Clay Tee by Ozetta, and there's really no reason I stopped working on this besides the fact that we were going through the process of the move and I lost steam on it. But once we knew we were having a girl, I thought maybe I could use this beautiful dusty pink color for something for her. I think it would make a really nice dress. Maybe the ruffle dress by Knitting for Olive, which is quite similar to the Arantis, but the ruffles are stockinette. And that ruffle dress pattern comes with many variations. You could make a romper or a dress, and you can also make the short sleeve or long sleeve version. So I feel like it would be helpful to have this pattern in my library. I don't yet, but I think it would be nice to have because you could make so many different sizes and variations throughout their childhood. And I think that this yarn would be really nice for her, or maybe I could finish this Clay Tee, because when you pull out these old knits that you haven't thought about or looked at in so long, it's like, why didn't I finish this? But she will also be able to wear a lot of hand-me-downs from my son, because over time I have added to his wardrobe and he has grown out of a few of them. He still wears a lot of them because I made them in the size like 4T, and at the time when he was 2, he was quite bulky and he was quite a big boy because he was still nursing and eating foods. And once he stopped nursing, he kind of slimmed out, I guess you'd say. And now he still fits those things that I made in the size 4, but they're starting to get short on him. So like I said, with the Dagmar, I knit him in the size 6. So that he can wear it for some time to come. And that's the thing I think I'm going to do with hers as well, is always just knit it a couple years up and roll those sleeves up for the first year they're wearing it, and then the next year they can still wear it, but just like in the size it's meant to be. She is going to get a lot more wear out of his Ingrid sweater than he ever did, because I knit it in the size, I think, 2 years, and he was too big for it when I finished it. So it'll be really nice that she'll get to wear that, and she'll also get to wear his hand-me-down cotton Monday sweater I made that is so special to us because he wore the heck out of that thing for a while. As I shared, we moved to Australia during a time where we kind of had back-to-back winters. So he not only wore it for 2 winters here in America, but that extra bonus winter we had in Australia. And it is so cute. He got to wear this on our coastal New England trip. We drove from Virginia up the coast to Acadia National Park in Maine. And that was such a special trip. So I have some really beautiful photos of him in Acadia in this sweater. And I can't wait to go back to Acadia this fall for my friend's wedding and get to take a photo of them in the same place, but with her wearing his sweater. I think that's going to be so special. But my son wore this cotton sweater as if it were an extra layer throughout all of our travels. And in the day-to-day, we would toss it over whatever a t-shirt he had on as if it was a jacket. And it was just the perfect thing in his wardrobe. And I was so sad when he did finally outgrow it. That was actually my first finished knitted sweater, because as I was working on that folklore cardigan I mentioned, I decided to learn the ropes with knitting a little bit better by doing a simpler pattern along the way in between working on the folklore cardigan. And that helped me so much with learning knitting, because I really threw myself in the deep end with that folklore cardigan. Now, as far as fibers and maintenance, kids can be really hard wearing on their knits. So you want to have fibers that are more durable and breathable. I really like to use cotton yarns for my toddler because they're so easy to clean and so durable. They don't pill very much, but I also like to use wools, which are antibacterial. I feel like all we do is like lay them out. We spot clean them and then we'll lay them out to kind of air out. I mentioned a lot of different types of merino wools in this video. Ones like drops are a bit more skin soft for the babies, the extra fine merinos, and for their sensitive skin. And then some of the other ones I mentioned are a bit more hard wearing and more durable, but they're way less likely to pill for those bigger toddlers. I do hand wash all of my knits because I'm so scared for something to go wrong in the washer or dryer. Definitely no dryer. But I wash them very rarely, and only usually when there's a mess that's not really spot cleanable, because like I said, they don't need it that often. Wool is very antibacterial. After a wear, we usually kind of lay them over the back of a chair or something so that it can just kind of breathe before we fold it away. And I really only give my wools a wash at the end of a season. I have actually attempted a machine wash recently with a yarn that was good for that, and I put it in a delicate bag in the wash on a delicate cycle, and it turned out perfectly. And that spin cycle did help to get most of the moisture out so that when I laid it flat to dry, it dried pretty quickly. So I may attempt that with some of the baby knits, because I would assume if there's any blowouts or anything in these rompers, I'm going to need to give it a real wash, not just a spot clean, obviously. So I may have to be a little more brave with machine washing when it comes to some of the smaller baby knits, because those things that they wear on their skin versus layering like a cardigan or a sweater will need more frequent washes. I don't necessarily think that it's necessary for your wools or merinos to be super wash just because they're for a baby. But I do think it is a consideration, especially if you are someone who doesn't want to have a high maintenance wearable, especially in those early days when they are pooping and spitting up on everything. I do think that the Drops Baby Merino, I'll correct myself on screen if I'm wrong, but I think it is super wash. So you'd be able to throw it in a delicate bag and put it in the wash on a delicate cycle and have it fresh and clean, just laid flat to dry. So that is my plan for those smaller things. But most of these larger, woolier cardigans, I will probably just use as layering pieces and let them air out between wears. I did get a question when I mentioned that I'm going to make my baby knits video about how I navigate wearing my woolly knits with a baby to avoid any skin irritation. Now, I will say, when I had my son, I was very new to the knitting world. When I was pregnant with him, I was really only crocheting, and when he was about 1 is when I was starting to knit. So that's why I never made him any baby size things, and thank goodness I didn't, because he wouldn't have fit them. I think that the way I'm going to go about it is probably just not wearing anything. I wouldn't want to risk getting spit up on during those early months. And when it comes to things like my mohair cardigans, I will have to see how that goes, and that will probably be a good indicator of whether or not I should knit with mohair when it comes to her skin and whether it's too sensitive for that. Because I do have my Lake's cardigan that I wear all the time. And so if I wear that while holding her, and if it causes her any problems, then I will just know to not wear that around her, and also to not knit mohair for her. I definitely don't want her breathing that in her nose and all of that. So I'll be considerate of that when wearing my knits. But I feel like when you're early postpartum, you're kind of just wearing t-shirts with spit up on them anyway, so I'm not too worried about my woolens. I don't think it'll be something I'm thinking about. But whenever we do go out, if I'm wearing something woolly, I will be paying attention to how her skin responds to it. And I will definitely report back to you, because we talked about so many things that I am wanting to make for this baby. And I definitely want to make a follow-up video to this when I've made a lot of them, how they've worn, whether I feel like they were worth it, how I liked the yarn I used for them, and also whether or not how she reacted to my knits that I wear. This was a really long one. So I want to thank you so much for sitting with me and spending your knitting time listening to all of my baby knits. And if you yourself are doing any baby knitting, whether it's for gifts or for your own, please let me know down below, or just let me know what you are working on while watching this video. Once again, thank you so much to FlexiSpot for gifting me this beautiful reclining chair. It is the perfect addition to my cozy corner for my knitting, for keeping me comforted during the end of this pregnancy, as well as the early postpartum days when I am rocking her. But again, thank you so much for spending your time unraveling with me. And don't forget to do all of the cozy things that help you unravel. Stay cozy, happy knitting, and I will see you with another video soon.